You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to ThunderQuack Perfect 10. I'm your host, Michael Cohen. Every episode, we dive deep with a special guest into a piece of pop culture they adore. Is it a 10 out of 10? Maybe. But to them, it's an undeniable masterpiece. So sit back, get comfy, and let's find some joy talking the holiday classic, Batman Returns with Danielle. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Danielle.
It's so fun.
This is great. So, I mean, like now, because this is 2 years in a row, this is now, I guess, this is gonna have to be the Christmas tradition. Is that you and I record in December? Which I am totally fine with. I'm totally like, yeah, like we just set a date, make sure at least once a year, you and I have a conversation about something geeky. And yeah, this episode, as a matter of fact, you know what? Like for everybody, normally it would be like early on Patreon, but because it's Christmas, we'll just drop this for everybody on Christmas Day.
The gift of giving.
Yeah. But to pull back the curtain, we're actually recording this on December 1st. So I am, let's say, barely in the Christmas spirit, but I watched this movie last night to prep, and I feel I am more in the Christmas spirit after having watched Batman Returns. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, we were like, I was like, it's good. This episode's coming out on Christmas Day, so let's pick something like very Christmassy, right?
Uh-huh.
And we went back and forth a little bit with a couple of things, and then you were like, what about Batman Returns? I think your husband suggested it, right?
Yeah. So when you said let's do something Christmassy, my brain was instantly, the typical stuff: Elf, Nightmare Before Christmas, Muppet Christmas Carol in my case. And I asked my husband, and he's like, Die Hard. I was like, no. And he goes, Batman Returns, and I'm like, okay, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You know what? Every single thing that you just listed, though, all perfect 10s. Like all of them are totally viable candidates for an episode.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm gonna upset some people. I recognize that Muppet Christmas Carol is a perfect 10. I don't particularly. It's not part of my Christmas tradition, so
I respect
that. I bear no ill will to it, and I am a huge Muppets fan. But I don't know, there's something about that one that like it's just never really vibed with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's not on my own personal list, but that doesn't mean that I can't acknowledge that I know that it's a perfect 10. I mean, like I know the memes, and I know it's Michael Caine against a bunch of Muppets. Like,
well, so like my
love?
kids would rather watch both Home Alones, and then I'm like, well, we can do the Mickey's Christmas Carol or the Muppet Christmas Carol. Apparently, those are just my two go-tos of the same story. I don't know.
You know what? I think you just nailed it for me, because like the Mickey Christmas Carol with Scrooge McDuck,
yeah,
that's like that's my Christmas Carol. Like beyond just like like cartoon characters or Muppets or whatever, like doing a version of Christmas Carol. No. The Mickey Mouse Scrooge McDuck Christmas Carol is like that just is the Christmas Carol. Like there's no, like the only other version that I'll allow is the Ghostbusters episode where they actually accidentally catch all of the ghosts. They catch they bust the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and then they have to take over for them.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many great things to get us into the Christmas spirit, but on this episode, I mean, it's Christmas Day. Hopefully everybody is firmly in the Christmas spirit right now.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody's having an awesome day today. But yeah, we're gonna take, I would consider it a slight detour away from the chestnuts roasting and the eggnog and the merry and bright into some slightly darker territory.
Presents
I
exploding, penguins
yeah,
exploding.
I Crystal's never seen Batman Returns.
Really?
And so last night I was sitting down to watch it and I was like, you want to watch it with me? It's technically a Christmas movie, which I thought might get her. And she was like, I'll probably just fall asleep. And I was like, that is accurate. That's an accurate statement. So I was like, it's okay, you're off the hook. But then like I finished the movie and then I came to bed and she was still awake. And
Oh.
and she was like, how was it? And I was like, how was it? You're aware that I was there like opening weekend in 1992. Like this is not new for me. It's
Right.
been a long time since I've sat down and watched it end to end, like all the way through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's Batman Returns. Like, I know this movie backwards and forwards. And then I was explaining to her that the opening of it, like how this movie begins, and the penguins with rocket launchers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, "What?" So, anyways, we'll get into it. Before we do, I'm just really quickly going to give a little bit of an explanation of what exactly Batman Returns is for maybe those who aren't as familiar. I will also take this opportunity, as my voice is starting to show. I am technically sick right now, and I'm just like I'm hopped up on cold medication and warm liquids and cough drops to get through this episode. But so if my voice starts to go, that's why. But that's okay. It's, you know what, it is that time of year, so I think it's thematically appropriate. Um, but here, let me get into this. So, what is Batman Returns? A step back into the shadows of Gotham City, where the night air is thick with mystery and danger. In the 1992 cinematic spectacle Batman Returns, the Dark Knight once again grapples with the malevolent forces threatening to plunge Gotham City into chaos. Directed once again by Tim Burton, this dark and atmospheric installment of the Batman franchise introduces us to a Gotham bedecked in the eerie glow of holiday festivities, a stark contrast to the grim tales unraveling beneath the surface. Michael Keaton reprises his role as the brooding and enigmatic hero facing off against a trio of formidable foes. The deformed and malevolent Penguin, portrayed, I'll say now, expertly by Danny DeVito, emerges from the city sewers with a sinister agenda. Alongside him, Michelle Pfeiffer breathes life into the beguiling and vengeful Catwoman, creating a femme fatale with her own motives in the city's complex web of crime. And perhaps worst of all, Christopher Walken as Max Schreck, a wealthy Gotham businessman with an unsurprisingly black heart and evil machinations. Batman Returns weaves a tale of duality where heroes and villains blur the lines between right and wrong. With Burton's signature gothic aesthetic and a cast that delivers both menace and vulnerability, this film remains a standout in the Batman cinematic legacy and is firmly ensconced in the halls of Christmas movies by virtue of the fact that it doesn't only take place at Christmas. Like, there are Christmas aspects that are like core to the story, right? So um that's why we're talking about Batman Returns on this episode. I
Okay, so I have a question for you. So I had to confirm this with my mom. I was 4.5 when this film came out, and we went to the theaters to see it. So little old me toddling in there to watch this thing. And when you were watching it yesterday, because we both rewatched it yesterday, did you find, like, your memory of it as a child, did you find it comparatively different now that you're, an adult, or was it mostly the same from what you can remember?
this movie is insane. This movie is cuckoo bananas
Oh
for
yeah.
Cocoa Puffs.
Oh yeah.
um as I was saying before, this Batman Christmas movie begins with the birth of a deformed child who is then thrown over the side of a bridge into a river
Ugh,
by his parents, one of whom is Pee Wee Herman.
rest in peace.
I Yeah. And I and then presumably raised by penguins in the zoo. I mean, like, that's sort of like
Yeah,
that's
I always
the
questioned that as a child, and then I just had to accept I just had to let that go.
yeah. Um, yeah, Tim Burton really doesn't care about logic in this
Mm,
film.
mm.
I
He's there for
Which is
vibes.
interesting. Yeah, the first one, Batman 1989, is so grounded, right?
Right.
Like obviously, you got a man in a bat costume fighting a clown with a disfigured face. Um, but there's a lot of stuff that he did in 1989 that like really, like, it stands the test of time, I think.
Hmm.
Like that movie is pretty near perfect in an objective way,
Right.
right? But this one, like, Batman Returns is a perfect 10, not because it is objectively perfect, but because it is actually horrendously flawed. But we actually love it because of those things, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even in spite of those things. It is specifically because of them that this movie is so wonderful to watch. And that opening, man, I mean, like, let's see, in 1992, so I would have been I would have been 7 years old
Yeah.
in the theater.
I was 4.5. Uh,
Yeah.
and my parents took me to the theaters to see it, and I loved it instantaneously. That probably says a lot about me, but uh, I don't know. It's always stuck with me. It's funny because Batman '89 was actually a gift. I remember a Christmas where it had came out on VHS, and there's a
Hmm.
picture of me giving the present to my mom, and then of her opening it, and then of me and her standing together smiling, and she's holding the VHS tape of Batman. And so
Yeah.
and that's at Christmas time, and so then this film comes out and it's all Christmassy. So yeah, it has something to do with Christmas,
That
innately
yeah,
Christmas.
it's so funny. That VHS, Batman 1989, which I don't think came out until like 91.
That would make sense.
I
Yeah.
um that was one of the first, like, actually priced to own at home VHS tapes, because this is a piece of I I guess lore about the 90s, that and mostly the 80s, that the Gen Zs, I think, will probably not understand, which is that, like, when VHS first hit the market, most of the tapes were over $100,
Yeah, they were expensive.
right?
Yeah.
So expensive to own a VHS, which is how video rental stores came into existence, right?
Mhm.
So, like they would invest in the tape, and then you would rent it from them, because, like, how many times are you really going to watch a movie, right? But
If it's
Batman
Bambi, a lot.
1989, well, yeah, Batman 1989 was such a massive hit and made so much money that it was one of the first ones, if I'm recalling correctly, that was like, because I remember everybody getting it. Like, that's the
Mm,
thing, is that, like, before that, everybody getting a movie, like having a movie, owning a movie, was like our VHS collection in the 80s was like nothing, right? Like
right.
my dad worked at he worked in an electronics company, um I called oh man, what was it? I think it was called Granada, something like that. And, like, they have long I don't think that they exist anymore. But this is back in the day when, like, going and buying a TV set or a VCR or a computer was like a novel thing. Not even everybody, like, had a newer TV in their house. Like
Yeah. Oh
we're
yeah.
talking, like, because I'm 85, right?
Yeah.
So, like, those first 5 years of my life in the 80s, they are weird. They are weird. But we had a VCR, and we had blank tapes.
Yeah.
And so everything in our VHS collection, up until probably like 91 or 92, when it started to change, they were all, like, recorded off of the TV,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Like, that's like every movie that I watch, like, I Man, let me think. What movie is it? I can't remember what movie it is, but we had a movie that like I can remember the commercials for like the movie because you would record the movie on like a Saturday night or something,
Mm-hmm.
and because there would be like the Saturday night movie, the big movie of the week. Actually, movie of the week is a term for something else, but like it would be like the big like the thing that like every station had like on Saturday, Friday, either like a Friday or a Saturday night, they had like their big movie that they were gonna play. And so we recorded whatever it was, and I all of the every commercial break had a preview for next week, which like the next week was the movie Scrooged with Bill
Oh
Murray.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's just like it's like seared into my memory because I can't remember what movie it was, but it's a movie that like we watched a million times, right? And the only copy that we had of it was that. But
That recording.
1989 Batman 1989 was one of those first ones that like I can remember like going to somebody's house and it's like they had it because I can remember I can see the box, which is like
Mm-hmm.
that the black box with
With the bat symbol.
that gold bat logo on it and
Yep.
like that awesome blocked Batman text. Like it's just like it's so
If I
seared
recall,
into
they
my
had a
memory.
picture of Nicholson's Joker on the back that was taking up like the right
Yeah, I
hand
think
side of
so.
it. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that one and then I know like 91 was the year that we got our VHS copies of Ghostbusters.
Mm.
Um and it's like those VHS tapes are just like they're I don't know they're like magic to me like in my brain like they're so like a place in time because we had the box set of the Ghostbusters movies that was 1 and 2
Okay.
so it was like both of them in like one sleeve
Yeah.
um and so on the front of it was the Ghostbusters poster. It had like the red border around it and then like the no ghost logo and then the three of them underneath it and then you flipped it over and on the back side of it was the
2.
the Ghostbusters 2 poster, which was the same thing, the red border, the no ghost logo with the
The
peace
2
symbol,
fingers. Yeah.
right, with the two fingers up, and then all four of them and Ray and Winston with the slime blowers, right, in the black uniforms, in the like the charcoal
Right.
flight suits. So it's like those two videos, like it's just such a place in time, but that it's so funny because it's also like it kind of sets the scene for like leading into Batman Returns, um, which like we all had copies of Batman and watched them over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
and Batman had become like the biggest thing in the world
Yeah.
at that point in time because there was that, and then the animated series hit
Yes.
in I want to say that animated series was either 91 or 92. Let me look this up. But
Because I know
Batman
it
the
was around.
animated
I know
series,
it was around the same time.
yeah. Um let's see when did it originally air? So it took influence from no, but when did it start? Yeah, September 5th, 1992. So like and that was a direct response to how popular Batman 1989 had been, right? So I mean like
Mm-hmm.
that it takes 3 years for them to get it up,
Right.
but that's animation for you, right? It takes a while.
Right.
Um so yeah, like going into Batman Returns, it's like everybody's got a VHS copy of Batman. I Batman the animated series is the best cartoon on
Oh,
television,
it's great.
right?
It's so good. It
I
still stands up too.
Yeah. Oh, like listen, Batman the animated series stands up better than most superhero content that's ever been created. Like I what's the episode? Is it Heart of Ice, I think, is the Mr. Freeze episode is
Mm.
not just one of the best animated or best Batman or anything like it's one of the best 22 minutes of television that's ever been made. Like that episode is a masterpiece. It's a total work of art.
Yeah.
Um and so like I remember 1992, so second grade for me. I Halloween, everybody was Batman. Like everybody was Batman, and we all had like varying levels of authenticity to our costumes.
Yeah.
My Batman costume that Halloween was Batman pajamas that were just black pants, like it's like any pajama pants would have done, but these were the
Right.
Batman ones, so they're just black pants. And then the long sleeve shirt that had the Bat logo, and then the like the design of the belt, right? The utility
Mm-hmm.
belt, like very specifically the 1989
Right.
utility belt, right? And then a homemade cowl that didn't quite work.
Oh.
And a homemade cape with the string that tied. And I think maybe it had like a yellow collar
Mm.
and like maybe yellow cuffs on the arms and legs, but
I I went I
yeah,
went
that was
as
my Batman costume.
I went as a store-bought Catwoman, but oh man, was it awesome. Like it was regular, like
Yeah.
stretchy material or whatnot, and then it had like the little corset that velcroed in the back, and then it gave you plastic claws that you could set
Ooh.
over each finger. And then of
Yeah.
course, the mask that you pull down, it was cloth too. But I remember being one of, because at that time, weirdly enough, my elementary school would hold costume contests for Halloween, and I was one of 3 cat women up there. So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
wore I wore that thing probably like 2 or 3 Halloweens in a row. That's how much I loved it.
Yeah, yeah. It was so crazy. How big Batman was at the time, and I think if you weren't there, especially like I think of the ages that we were at the
Yeah.
time,
Well, especially
I
like
think it's hard to understand.
the McDonald's tie-ins too. Did
Yeah.
did you live through that as well
Oh yeah,
in
yeah,
Canada?
absolutely. I mean, like the that was back in the time when McDonald's promotions were the same in Canada that they were in the US.
Oh,
So it wasn't
okay.
until
Okay.
I think like the early 2000s that it shifted, and
Mm,
all of a sudden like we would have different promotions up here than they would have down there.
gotcha.
Because I can remember even up until, yeah, it would have been like the early 2000s, because like Tarzan, even before that, like Hercules, like all of like,
Mhm.
because I think about the Disney movies mostly is where that stuff sort of syncs up. We had the same stuff.
Gotcha.
The Inspector Gadget toy, we had that up here, and you guys had that down there as well. So, but now it's different, right? So it's like last month we had Pokemon cards, but I don't think that they had Pokemon cards in the States last month. I think it was Disney 100 or something. But
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
McDonald's is expensive here now, so
you know what? I mean, like the Happy Meal stuff has also gone so downhill. I
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I would say that like 1992, 93 was the peak. Like that was it. It's so difficult because obviously I view it with a nostalgic lens, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like prime time for
Well,
that
it's like
sort of marketing.
the
But
chicken nuggets tasted like plastic, but gosh darn it, you were gonna get an
yeah.
awesome, good quality toy. So,
Like I mean, I remember when they did Sonic the Hedgehog when Sonic 3 was coming out, and there were no other Sonic the Hedgehog toys.
yeah.
Like that was it. Like your McDonald's toys were your Sonic toys. Like
Mhm.
that was it. And so like it wasn't even a matter of whether or not they were good quality. It was the only choice you had, but thank goodness they were also awesome toys. Um I mean, I still have my Sonic that launches out of the. It's got like for some reason the dust cloud that he's in is orange, but I he like clicks into the dust cloud, and then you push the button,
Mm.
and he like shoots out of it on his little wheels. And I've got a Robotnik as well, but he's a little wind up guy. But yeah, the the um the McDonald's toys for this for Batman Returns were so fantastic.
Mhm.
Recreating some of the best moments in the movie, in particular like the Batmobile, which I still have. I think I have like 2 or 3 of them around, because I had brothers, so we all got the Happy Meal and all had
Right.
our own Batmobile. But it recreating one of the most ridiculous scenes in the movie. I it it like that Sonic, same thing. Like it like launched out of it, but it was like the full Batmobile, right?
Yeah.
And you drive it
Oh, and then
around or
the little
whatever.
skinny bullet version.
Yeah, but it didn't actually. It like they didn't quite get the memo, or I don't know exactly how it went down and turned out the way that it did, but they kind of got the gist of it.
Hmm.
And it like the way that it separated the toy, this Happy Meal toy, is that like the front two wheels and then like the chassis, right, like the cockpit
Hmm.
of the Batmobile would launch out of the back, which was the back two wheels and the fins and the the jet engine on the back, right?
Hmm.
Like, so you push the button and like just the cockpit and then the front would come up, but it was more like it was kind of like a T shape, right? It didn't actually like launch the little the little bullet version of it, but that didn't matter. It didn't matter. We all thought it was the coolest thing
Oh
ever.
yeah.
Yeah, and there was like the I think the penguin in his like duck,
Hmm.
his little duck
Hmm. And
boat
Catwoman had
thing,
a
and
purple car. Though if
yeah, yeah.
if I recall, the Catwoman had more of like the '60s Adam West look to her rather than the Michelle Pfeiffer look.
I think the Catwoman herself might have been the Michelle Pfeiffer one, but yeah, like the car was definitely inspired by.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna bring
Eartha
up
Kitt,
this
I
great.
think was her name.
Yeah, the Eartha Kitt one.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's so funny because we're just talking about
We're just talking about toys.
um well, we're just kind of talking about the stuff around it, right?
Yeah.
But
But I mean,
um
that's how huge it was. So, did you
yeah,
happen to read the Wikipedia page for this movie? Because, man, that was some wacky stuff. This script and just trying to come up with an idea was all over the place. So, studios were being studios and were like, "Hey, this movie was a hit. It's awesome. People love it. Let's make another one." And Tim
yeah.
Burton said no unless I have more control, which is very evident once you watch it. Compare the
Mhm.
two. Um, and then they're like, great, we're going to do all this marketing and we're going to do all these toy tie ins. And obviously, the cartoon was on the way. And
Yeah.
then, it comes out and like they couldn't agree on who was going to be the nemesis. And like Tim Burton knew he wanted a femme fatale. So he was like, okay, I guess Catwoman goes in there. So her whole, pleather look was right there from the get go. And then
Yeah.
they wanted to do Joker again. He said no. Two-Face got thrown around. And then somebody suggested Penguin. And they're like, oh, that's the weird guy from the '60s with the top hat and the cigarette. That he seems useless. But Tim Burton, being Tim Burton, was like, well, how about we make him look like a penguin and then
Yeah.
discuss what it's like to be hated because you're weird, and let's make him sympathetic. So then he took those two things that he liked and squeezed, you know, it, sandwiched them between Batman and a Batman movie. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was crazy. And then, of course, there was controversy that came out, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, Batman has no arc in this film.
He's just there.
He has no effect on the plot whatsoever. He is a bystander in almost every scene he's in.
Yeah.
But he does show up 13 minutes into the movie. Like that is one thing where like so many of these superhero movies, especially like the more modern ones, like they just totally missed the point of why we bought a ticket. And so when I was sitting and watching last night, and it's like obviously I clocked it at 13 minutes in, when we first get to see Batman, and it's like, well, it doesn't it doesn't matter how absurd the story is, how grotesque the characters are. Everybody dies at the end, like Hamlet, and Batman's standing there like Horatio, like looking at the audience, like, I guess I win. Because he didn't do any of it, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
yeah.
didn't. I guess like he kind of defeats the Penguin in a certain way,
Well, he
but really
rescues the
like
children, but it's off
yeah,
screen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing how little Batman is in this movie that he is apparently returning
Yeah.
in.
Which I found
Because it
bizarre because
is
they're like, let's
yeah,
let's say we're gonna steal these kids. Let's show that we're
yeah,
stealing these kids. oh, but never mind, Batman rescued them. They're back home in a letter being read by the
In a
Penguin. I'm like,
letter. Yeah. Cause yeah, like it was so funny because I'm watching last night and it gets to the point where like, where Penguin is framing Batman for the murder of the tree lighting
yeah,
woman, the model,
the
right?
Ice
Model slash
Princess.
actress,
Yes.
the Ice Princess. Thank you. I and I look at the runtime and I'm like, there's not much movie left.
Yeah.
I remember a very big third act in this, and it's like, oh, the
Because of
third
the
act actually
explosions.
like it whips by so fast.
It does.
Like the bat boat, like it's like if you get up to go to the bathroom, you missed all of the coolest stuff in this movie, right?
And
But
I just
also
want to
all of
say,
the stuff that makes absolutely no sense, like the penguins being
right.
strapped to rocket launchers and stuff.
And you know what? I feel like Danny Elfman's score does a
Yeah.
lot of heavy lifting
Oh, yeah,
in that last scene.
yeah. Danny Elfman's back is still sore. Because he absolutely carried this movie with that score 1,000%.
Yeah.
You nailed that. Yeah,
Because if you were
yeah,
to listen to it on mute, you're like, okay, penguins are walking. Okay, there's a really long tunnel of a boat going down, and people are just kind of standing, and people are falling into water, and then the penguins are walking again, and things blew up, and that's it.
yeah.
But
It's
because the music's so
but
epic, you're like on the seat, tensed.
but you know what? Like I like this is all the perspective as an adult, in the year 2023,
True. Oh
comparing it
man, it was so awesome
to
as a 4
Endgame, and yeah,
yeah.
but like in 1992 as a 7-year-old, I like this was peak cinema. Like there
Yeah.
wasn't like the better movie hadn't been made. So much so that like, a couple years later when we would roll around to Batman Forever, it was like we were still riding that Batman high all the way into that. I mean, like
Oh
the
yeah.
animated series and Mask of the Phantasm having been in theaters in between, definitely helps with all of that. But yeah, like it none of it mattered. None of the ridiculousness of it mattered. And it's so funny because I kind of think of it now, and I think of the way that my dad regarded this film, and it was sort of a thing of like, oh man, it's so good, I love this movie, and my dad would kind of just be like, yeah, whatever, just like kind of dismissive of it. And I didn't, and it I never clocked it as a kid. It's sort of a thing that I'm like remembering now, of like, because there are other movies like Jurassic Park's a good example of like, I went and saw Jurassic Park with my dad opening weekend, and we were equally blown away, and it was the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
um and then I was like, I want to go see it again, primarily because I covered my eyes for the whole T-Rex sequence,
Oh
the
no.
first time, because I was 8 years old, right? So I was like, we need to go back. I need to see it again. And my dad was like, absolutely, let's go. Like 1,000%, we're going to see
Right.
Jurassic Park again.
Yeah.
Because he was totally fine to go see Jurassic Park a second time. I covered my eyes again the
Oh
second
no.
time.
That's
So
so
then the
good.
third time when I was like, I need to go see it, I need to see this T-Rex stuff, my dad was like, well, I'm not taking you. So my mom's friend, one of my mom's coworkers that was her good friend, took me to see it. She had a Jeep. It was the best. She picked me up
Oh,
in her Jeep,
nice.
and then we like drove over in her Jeep, and I was like, this is the coolest car ever because of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a different Perfect 10 episode. We'll get it. But like, just to contrast that with Batman Returns, where it was like, I think we walked out of that theater and my dad was like, well, I guess that was a movie. And I was like, that was the coolest thing ever. Did you see the penguins with rocket launchers?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want the toys. So as a 7-year-old, it was like heaven, right? Like
Yeah.
these weird, like as I said before, grotesque characters. I think this is actually something that I do think is missing for kids nowadays. I think their content since the late 90s, early 2000s
Mhm.
is so sanitized, um
Yes.
that like I think it's actually super super important for kids to have horror that they can engage with, like horror that is like that's on their level. And I do think that actually that's exactly what Tim Burton was delivering in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I think he got a little bit too up his own butt by the late 90s. Like I would say like anything after Sleepy Hollow I don't care for.
Yeah. I kind
With
of
the
checked out
exception
as
of Big
well.
Fish.
Yes,
Big
it's
Fish is a
old. Big
Big Fish is a
Fish.
phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, that movie is amazing.
That made me cry.
But everything else he's done since then, I'm just like it's like it's just so Tim Burton. It's just him like remixing his own BS, right? But like I think of this era and I think of like Batman Returns, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Like oh my god, it's and then Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach that he produced. He didn't direct.
That was a good one.
But yeah, like so I think of that era and it's like Tim Burton really, along with Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, gave us all that little bit of
creepy.
Yeah, like he just, I don't know, he was able to like they were able to give kids that outlet to get spooked, get a little bit freaked out in a safe way and process things and then be resilient as a result, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like that's why we tell ourselves scary stories, right? It's
funny. It's the exact same film, but you see it in such different lenses because as a little kid, all I really cared about was, oh, Catwoman has cats and ooh, the penguin has penguins. And it was very, very basic. Like, okay, why do these parents seem to put their baby in a cage? Why are they throwing it in the water? Like, that seems scary. Is it because they're bad parents or is it like something's truly wrong with the kid? And that's a very basic way of thinking about it. But you're like, oh, okay, well, he was a creepy baby. I just still don't think it's fair he got tossed into the water. But, he's pretty weird and creepy. But, so Catwoman, man, she left a huge impression on me because I don't know what a secretary at 4.5 years old. I don't know what a secretary is. I don't know big corporations. I don't know the dynamics of, a big CEO versus a lowly worker, whatever. But you can instantly pick on or what a power plant is. I don't know what a power plant is at that age, but you get the understanding message of this guy is lying every which way to Sunday and is not to be trusted. She clearly has, self-esteem issues. She's got a lot going on in her life that she's overwhelmed by. And it's never good to push anybody out of a window. And Sid seems, clearly she needs some help, but it's totally understandable that she would go crazy and destroy her house and stuff. And revenge. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense to my little brain. But, the fact that, he wants to steal kids and kill them because that's what his parents did to him. That's terrifying as a little kid. But I somehow understand his sense of revenge as to why he feels compelled to do this. But it was all very, like, those are the big things that I got that are scary, that stand out. But at the same time, all these other things I didn't really see until especially yesterday when I watched it. Like the fact that when Selena goes back in, like Max is telling Bruce Wayne, oh, my assistant's gone on vacation, and she shows back up. Bruce Wayne does not pay attention to anything. As a kid, I remember that scene just going, oh yeah, Bruce Wayne doesn't care. He's listening to both of them talk. As an adult watching it yesterday, I'm like, he is zeroed in on how she physically looks the entire time. He's not doing anything else. He's not listening to what they're saying. He's zoned out. He's just staring at her. Or as a little kid, when Max tries to get Penguin on board with being mayor, and how he's like eating the fish. Okay, that's gross and creepy. And then all these people are super happy and cheerful. Okay, well, that's what office people are supposed to be, cheery. And then it's creepy that he's laughing and bites the guy's nose. That's it. That's the context I'm only picking up as a small child. As an
Yeah.
adult, I'm like, oh, there's so much sexual innuendo going on, and it's not like it's
Yeah.
mostly violent, and this is weird. So it was very bizarre to find things terrifying as a child that are still technically terrifying as an adult, but I guess because I'm more aware of violence in general, like explosion violence, penguin bombs, whatever, that doesn't hit me as much. But it was the adult undertones that I'd never picked up as a child, but absolutely saw now that terrified me even more. So it was weird to have that
Yeah.
experience.
If you had asked me what the plot of this movie was before last night,
Mhm.
I would have been like, well, the penguin runs for mayor and Catwoman fights everybody. That's the movie, right? And like I know like Max Schreck is a businessman and he's like, I don't know, he's like messing with everything, right? And that would have been like my summary of it. And then watching it, I was like, this power plant stuff completely forgotten, like completely out of my mind, so not a
Yeah.
part of the story.
Yeah.
Like the nuances of the Catwoman story, like just not even there. Even like the romantic stuff between her and Bruce, I had forgotten about until last night, and then I'm watching it and I'm like, oh yeah, there's like a whole thing. And like they talk about Vicky Vale a lot
Yeah. Yeah. I
in
had
this
forgotten that
movie.
part too, which was
um
interesting.
Even when he's by himself at one point, he's like he makes some comment to himself, and there's the moment where like Alfred's like regarding the Batmobile after that scene where he's like we should consider, you know, enhancing security, and Bruce is like, oh, enhanced security, yeah, you let Vicky Vale into the Batcave, I turned around and she was standing right there. It's so good because it like like as a sequel, it like a lot of sequels in this era didn't really acknowledge the movie before it.
Yeah.
It was just in a lot of instances it was just the same movie again.
Mhm.
But this one was like very much like you know, sort of like I mean, like I think of like Indiana Jones, right? Think of Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Temple of Doom doesn't reference Raiders of the Lost Ark to
It's
the
doing its own
degree
thing.
that they retconned it and say that it takes place before Raiders. It's technically a prequel. Like George Lucas came back afterwards and was when everybody was like, but what about Marion? And he was like, well, this movie technically takes place before the war. And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
okay then.
okay.
So like that's sort of what I think, and like with especially with kids movies with sequels, it was
Mhm.
like whatever, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like watching this again, it was like, oh my god, like he was really working on it, you know.
Yeah.
But then like as an adult watching it, like Christopher Walken is the villain of this film,
Oh,
right? Like
yeah. Like,
Catwoman's a victim,
yeah,
right?
as a kid,
Penguin is a victim, but he's
I
bad.
zoned him
He's just
out.
evil.
He's just a bad guy people hang out with. And as an
Yeah,
adult,
yeah,
I'm like, he's the worst person in this movie.
yeah. He has no reason for being a villain, right? He states it so simply to Bruce where he's like, there's all like, because Bruce is like it's a power surplus, and
Mhm.
he's like, there's no such thing, that's
Yeah.
like my ethos, that's my entire life, is that idea that like there's no such thing as too much power. And he's not talking about electricity, he's talking about influence and wealth and all of
Yeah.
that, right? Like
Yeah.
I was like, no, like this guy is the listen, Elon Musk is not a new problem. This is, we act like this guy is unique in some way, he's not.
Mm-mm.
We've been dealing with this stuff since really like the 80s, the early 80s, since the Reagan administration, right?
Yeah.
When everything started to really turn, and all of a sudden it was
Yeah.
like these corporate moguls were just like taking over everything. And this guy is just greed personified. He just wants,
Yeah.
that's it. Full stop. He just wants, that's his motivation, right? And
Mhm.
he has justifications and stuff for it, but at the end of the day, He just wants Gotham. And I mean, like he gets his comeuppance, and it's so good. Um, and it's also like it's kind of vague at the end. I like Catwoman. Does she die? She's technically got one life left,
Oh
right?
my gosh,
So
I just had a
if you're
realization.
keeping count,
Okay, sorry. This just
yeah,
popped into my head. Since you're discussing his power, do you know what kills him? He is fried by
yeah, the electricity,
the
right? Like that.
electricity, the power
Yeah,
generator
yeah,
for the air conditioner. He was
yeah,
killed by power. Sorry.
yeah. There was
um,
definitely a surplus. There was too much. Yeah, yeah,
sorry. To answer your original question, uh, it is she was originally supposed to die, but because people
yeah,
loved her performance so much, they demanded that she be alive, but she wasn't available to come back for pickups. So that's why it's vague. So when I was
yeah,
watching it, you can see that as the sparks start shooting all over the place, you can see someone shift out of the way as everything starts falling apart. And then
yeah,
Bruce comes over and starts digging through stuff. And then at the very end, obviously, there's the shadow, and she stands up at the end. But
yeah.
yes,
And he
there you
takes the
you
cat.
can now
Yeah,
you can now catch the little blip of someone running off screen.
yeah. I lucked out because I was gonna I had to I bought the movies. I bought them on digital,
Mm.
on the iTunes store. Because it was like, okay, so I can either rent them for $5, like I can rent Batman Returns for $5. That seems like a waste of $5. I or I
Or
can buy
Spider-Man,
it for $12.99 by itself.
right?
When I looked on Tuesday, it was like, or I can get all four of like this sort of era of Batman movies for $19.99
Nice.
on the iTunes store. And I was like, well, that's a great deal. And so I was like, well, I'll do that. And I didn't for some reason in that moment. I didn't do it. And then I was talking to Crystal about it, and I was like, I don't know, because the other option is that like it's streaming on a service up here called Crave,
Oh yeah,
which has a lot of like our HBO and that sort of content. So, so I was like, well, like it's streaming on Crave, but like that's the only place where I can stream it without like paying for it, right? Without buying
right.
or renting it. But we don't have a Crave subscription right now.
Mm.
And she was like, well, no, like we've got too many of these subscriptions. We're not watching half of them anyways. And I was like, yeah, like you're totally right.
I can relate
So
to
I was
that.
like,
Yeah.
so I'll just buy it, right? Like a one-time $20 for these four movies that I love is totally, yes, all four of them. Batman and Robin I also love for its own reasons.
Yeah.
Um she was like, yeah, whatever. And so then I go to buy them last night, and the price has gone up to $34.99. And I'm like,
What?
and some of the box art has changed, like some of the cover art has changed
Hmm.
on the iTunes store. And I was like, what? Why? And so I click into Batman Returns, and thankfully they just upgraded them this week to the 4K versions. Like just.
Ah,
So had I bought them on Tuesday, I would have been buying just the HD, just like 1080, right? The
gotcha.
high def
Yeah.
versions. But instead I got the 4K, and man, the 4K on my TV was just like pristine.
Nice.
Um,
I
so
watched
I
it
like I
through
don't think
I
I've
watched
ever
it through
seen the movie in
Amazon
that high
Prime.
quality.
So,
Yeah. Um, so yeah, like yeah, it was worth the extra $15, I think.
mm.
Crystal was like, $35 is a little bit much, and I was like, it's still a good deal. It's still a good deal. Uh,
Paying for that
she was still
quality.
waffling. She was still waffling, so I was like, "Well, I have rewards points. These rewards points over here with this thing,
There
and
you
if I do that, I can redeem a $40 gift card for iTunes. So I'll do that." And she was like, "Okay, that's
go.
fine." So really, I didn't spend any money,
Reasoning,
but
reasoning. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but yeah. So now I have all four. Like I have Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin all in 4K. 4K streaming, so it's not true 4K, right? It's not like if you have
Right.
a 4K Blu-ray where it's like super
Yeah.
pristine, but then you have to have a 4K Blu-ray player. I mean, like I have a PS5 thankfully with the disc,
Right.
like with the disc player, but it's funny because like so many people, I don't even think we were talking about VHSs at the beginning of this conversation, and I don't like most people these days, I don't think even have a way to play a Blu-ray or anything. Like they've maybe got an older Blu-ray player, but like 4K Blu-rays, like I don't think that most people have invested the money that it requires to have a 4K Blu-ray player.
Yeah. I
I'd be surprised
use
unless you're a cinephile.
I use my Xbox Series X. That's it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you've got a gaming console, then maybe,
but I mean,
right?
even then, because like most people would only get in my Xbox ecosystem like a Series S because it's cheaper, and that's
Yeah.
just purely digital, so you can't watch
Yeah.
discs on it either. So
Yeah. No, I always have to have the disc because I've got older PlayStation games, right? And if I want to play those, right,
yeah,
it's yeah. But anyways, I yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've kind of done it. Where it's a little bit of a shorter episode if we cut it off here. But I don't know. Was there anything else about this movie that you were itching to get into?
I mean, not particularly. I just found it really the main dive that I found. I mean, I feel like we should talk about something Christmassy, but I mean, there's no real particular Christmassy message or anything. Like, people are lonely. There's lonely people out in the world,
Yeah.
and it it can be a trying time for them as well. But I mean, that's not really the basis of the film. As I said, it's mainly just vibes. But it was so interesting, just from a personal experience, to compare what I remember as a child and the things
Yeah.
that I fixated on as a kid versus, what I found interesting as an adult. You're like, yes, I still like all the cats and I still like all the penguins, sure, but the political side of it, and the machinations that come with it, and just corporate greed or political malalignment, as an adult, that really jumps out at you. Or as a kid, you don't even know what half the stuff they're talking about is. So it was really interesting just to see how different it was. But at the same time, it still feels good. Like, you can just zone out and just take it in for what it is. And as a woman, especially, you feel seen. And even though Selena Kyle's losing her marbles,
Yeah.
and developing a whole nother personality, you still feel vindicated a little bit. Um, and so that's interesting to kind of see and
Yeah.
experience on a personal level.
I think there's a great moment that's in this film when the Ice Princess dies. And she's kind of a little bit shocked in the moment, but kind of goes along with it, and then afterwards says to the penguin, she's like, you said you were just gonna scare her. And then Danny DeVito delivers just pitch perfectly. I don't know, she looked pretty scared to me. It's so good. It's such a good gag. I But there's remorse there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I mean, honestly, I think that this movie is one of the first places where that sympathetic um anti-hero element of Catwoman started to come in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me because it's permeated almost all of the femme fatales in the Batman Rogues gallery at this point, to where like back like in the day, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Harley when she was introduced, Talia, were all considered bad guys, just
Hmm.
bad guys, right? Talia maybe a little bit of that blurriness because of the relationship with Bruce, but by the time that she reintroduces herself into the story, she's a bad guy, right?
Hmm.
But then after this stuff, like after Tim Burton introduces this element to Catwoman, and this actual like this real romance between her and Bruce, I mean, like, I think that it influenced an entire generation,
Yeah.
certainly. And so when we all got to the age where we were writing the ones writing the Batman stories, it's like Catwoman's not even considered a villain these days, right? Catwoman
Yeah.
is like a misunderstood hero.
Yeah, I never, even
Um,
as a little kid, I never saw her as a bad guy. Like, yes, she should
yeah,
not be blowing up that department store. She should not be, killing these
She's a
guys.
criminal. Yeah,
Absolutely,
but
but she
not a villain.
right, but she felt even then as a kid, it felt like it was justified, and I was
Yeah.
so distraught at the fact that she might die because she deserved a happy ending. And so even if it's that little snippet of her cat found a home and,
Yeah.
she's still alive out there somewhere, like, it felt good to know that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it definitely. I mean, like I think we all filled in the blanks as kids, right? So,
yeah.
and I think that if Tim Burton had continued with the story, I think the Catwoman would have made a return in the next film.
Yeah.
But obviously it goes in a very different direction with the next one.
Yeah, that was the
But yeah,
studio's call. They were like, "We need something more
yeah,
family fun." Which I guess I can't blame them.
yeah. I get it. I get it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like this whole era of Batman, I think is it's so interesting to me because the character has obviously gone through so many iterations
Yeah.
and been popular so many times, and every time that he's popular I feel it's for very different reasons, right?
Mhm.
1960s Batman, Adam West is such a far cry from this version, and then Michael Keaton's Batman, kind of a bit of honestly, I think like more of a heartthrob than anything, and that continues with Val Kilmer and George Clooney. Like that, you can kind of see it in that casting that
Yeah.
like this era, those four movies paint Batman as a sex symbol,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
which I don't like is not really core to the character. It's so interesting how much they do that in these four films, to the extent that it's almost a joke in the fourth one with the bat nipples, right? Like
Yes.
um but then the Christian Bale stuff is like there are these grounded, super quote unquote realistic takes on the character, and now like Pattinson's version is even different from that,
Yeah,
right? Like
he went with super brood.
yeah,
Like
but
Christian
there's
Bale's
also
definitely tortured, but he hasn't reached
yeah,
peak super brood yet.
no, you know what it is, Pattinson's Batman is also vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
um
I watched
I
snippets of it
I
recently. It wasn't bad.
I love it. The Batman is phenomenal. Like, but I am a Matt Reeves stan from the beginning.
Mm, mm.
He's one of my favorite directors. So, um, yeah, like the Apes movies are that he did. The two that he did are some of my favorite movies of all time. Um, he is such a phenomenal director, and his take on Batman, I think, is for my money the best one so far.
Yeah.
I not what I would do personally. I mean, like I am an Adam West, and then Diedrich Bader, Brave and the Bold Batman. Like that is
Mm,
like
mm.
that's if you gave me the keys to the franchise, I'd make a live action version of Brave and the Bold with
Gotcha.
with all the cameos and guests and everything. And Jason Momoa can still be Aquaman, but he has to say outrageous at some point. Um, yeah, no, I like that's like for me, like that's my favorite Batman is the Adam West Super Friends, you know,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, Batman and Robin style of Batman, which is like that's why the movie Batman and Robin doesn't hit off for me, because I look at that movie and I go like, well, this one's actually just like a modern version of the 1960s Batman, guys. Like that's what's going on there. And I
Right.
think people just didn't get it. They thought that they were going to get more of the other three, right?
Right.
And they ended up getting Batman and Robin, which I don't think is that big of a deal, but um yeah, it's still a difficult movie to get through,
I
but I
appreciate the
love it.
camp. Like, at some point,
Yeah.
you let go and you're like, "Okay. Let me just have fun with it."
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, this iteration of Batman is such an interesting time capsule for me of like a very specific point in my life. So
Yeah, for sure.
revisiting it was a lot of fun. And like, yeah, the Christmas vibes are throughout, and there are some like plot points like the tree lighting
Hmm.
and exploding presents and stuff like that it's all very Christmassy throughout. But to your point, like, it does not have like a Christmas message,
Yeah.
right? Other than throwing your child in a river is bad. Is that a Christmas message? I don't know. It feels very biblical.
Oh,
I
yeah.
a lot of stuff like that happening in the Bible. So the penguin turning into a Moses allegory wasn't what I think anybody expected from this movie. But there it is.
Mm,
Man, and it like listen, it's all the way through. It's all the way through because
mm.
he almost becomes mayor,
Yeah.
right? Very much like Moses being taken in by Pharaoh and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, yeah. Hard to see the penguin in this film as a hero. Not
For
Catwoman
sure.
easy, but listen, you know what? It's amazing. We've gone basically an hour at this point and haven't brought up the fact that Michelle Pfeiffer is smoking hot in this movie. Like, let's just like the Catwoman costume, absolutely iconic and very, like, I mean, like, listen, that was, I think, for a lot of us, our first introduction into what BDSM
Uh-huh.
culture looks like
Uh-huh.
nowadays. But outside of the costume, even like there are moments with her that she's got like that single strand of hair. It's so funny
The
because
one
it's
curl,
there
yeah.
it's there at the beginning when she's all like sort of like frumpy and unsure of herself,
Yeah.
and it's like, and but she's constantly moving it and playing with it, like trying to get it out of her face.
Yeah.
And the fact that she just leaves it when she, like, once she's Catwoman,
She
it's
owns
just
it.
there
Yeah.
all of a sudden. Yeah, like, she owns it, she's got that confidence, so all of a sudden this thing that is seen as a character defect at the beginning of the movie when we're introduced to her is now
Yeah.
like this thing that's like, it's so sexy, that one strand of hair, right?
Right.
And that's like, that is all. I'm not just, like, talking about like let's just objectify Michelle Pfeiffer. I say all of this to say that, like, her performance of both of those characters is, I mean, like, it's on par with like Christopher Reeve as Superman, right?
Hmm.
Like, the way that he transforms from Clark Kent into Superman, famously in the one scene where he's like considering telling Lois that he's Superman in the first movie, where he's standing all hunched over, and then there's a moment where he like straightens up and takes off his glasses, and you see him literally physically transform from Clark Kent into Superman right there.
Hmm.
And it's like, she does such similar things in this movie that I just, um yeah, I didn't want to close out this episode without making sure that we noted that I think, for me, I think this is the hottest that Michelle Pfeiffer has ever been on screen. Like,
Oh
like,
yeah, she took
unbelievable.
the character and ran with it. I mean, all the other Catwomans are fantastic, but she
Yeah,
is the one that's cemented. I mean, she really does, and it's just not just the way she talks, and of course, costume design did a great job. Her
yeah,
outfits ahead of time, her hair's kept up, so those unruly parts of herself, she
yeah,
tucks back, she's hiding away, um, and because she's not able to accept or own herself, or is trying to fit herself into these standards, the crazy shoulder pads of late 80s, early 90s, are, yeah, all in the
yeah,
clothes, but she carries herself very diminutively and very stiff, and once she loses that bit, she lets herself go. She walks more loosely. She's letting the curls out. She's done cut it a little shorter, um, rather than having it a little long. So to have it kept up, of course, is to imply that it's longer. And then she cuts it, which is a sign of like cutting loose all those constraints that you have. You can now be
yeah,
yourself and to express yourself more differently and openly. And again, like you mentioned with the curl, she's no longer pushing it out of her face. She is flaunting this new personality that is hers. She's not afraid to hide it. She doesn't know how she's controlling it, but she's not afraid to hide it. Even if she
Yeah.
has, more longing, like her dress attire as she's walking down the street when she talks to Bruce or at the party,
Yeah.
it's not she's not bearing a ton of skin per se, but she is
No.
definitely wearing it in a more feminine way. And I loved it too when I was watching it. She had, even though her apartment is like mostly made of steel beams and whatnot, she has very
Yeah.
like thought of as feminine things. So she has little tiny figurines, in her closet is a pink shirt with kittens on it.
Yeah.
And, just of course with the sewing kit and whatnot, but it's all these ideas of feminism. The tape recorder or the voice message machine of talking about the
Yeah.
perfume, right? Like she's
Yeah.
wanting, she doesn't see herself as a feminine figure. She collects these things that try and make her subconsciously feminine, and then she's getting these advertisements of you're still not good enough. Here, try some perfume on, and to please these people that treat you like trash and toss you out a window. And she finds, what that means to herself to be like this sexy cat. So even when her cat comes in and she's giving her milk and she's like, did you have fun on your sexual escapade, to the cat, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so she embraces that self, wearing not only, just the pleather, but even outside of it, and the way she dresses, she's suddenly much more comfortable with who she is. She just doesn't know how to fully control it. So, yeah, it was great to pick up on those little pieces that I hadn't
Yeah.
before.
And to your point, like you made the point earlier of Bruce like completely disregarding Shrek once Selena walks in the room, right? And
Yeah.
he's just like he is instantly taken with her, and she is not in a sexualized outfit. She is not objectified in any way.
She's
It
got
it is
bandages all
literally
over.
yeah, he literally is attracted to the confidence, right?
Yeah.
And so like you buy it. It is something that like watching it I was like hadn't really remembered as much of the romance as there is in it, but the two
Mhm.
of them together, um they really are foils for one another, right? Like they're
Yeah, I
mirrors.
thought it was
And
beautiful. I remember the romance part as a
yeah.
kid, but it registered as grown-ups being kissy. But,
Yeah.
now it was kind of like, I can see why, because, he's Bruce Wayne, he's got a confidence of I'm rich boy, but for the most part, it's very subdued. Whereas
Yeah.
she's very much like, I am opening myself and you can accept it or not. I don't care. And to an extent, he is very drawn to that open openness that she has of a bit of
Yeah.
I self-acceptance is an odd one to say, but she is embracing herself, and he's still, and he even tells her on the couch, like I laid it out flat to Vicky, and she just couldn't reconcile that I'm these two different people living these two different lifestyles, and
Yeah.
she fully gets it. Like, she doesn't say it outright, but she's like, well, that doesn't scare me, because she's going through her own process, and he's
Yeah.
drawn even more by it. Now you're not just a pretty face who's confident, you're someone who can understand me, and possibly in its own level help me process my own duality, because you're going through it too.
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
thought
I
that was
think I
nice.
think what yeah, I think what's really interesting about it is that like when you look at Vicky, and then you look at oh, what's the character's name in the next one? Nicole Kidman's character in
Oh
the
yeah,
next
yeah.
one.
And she's a psychiatrist.
Uh yeah, they both have very like let me take care of you
Yeah.
sort of vibes to them, especially Nicole Kidman
Yes.
in the next one. Like there's very much like there's some Oedipal stuff going on there with Batman of like I'm the Dark Knight, and but who takes care of the Dark Knight, and that's why he's
Yeah.
attracted to her.
Yeah.
But with Selena, and I think the reason why this has not only like it not only works in this movie, but it's turned into like the standard like canonical pairing for Batman
Mm-hmm.
is that Selina is his equal
Yeah.
in every way that matters, right?
Yeah.
She is she's a powerful and intelligent woman in her own right, but then she's also like, she wears the mask and she understands what that life is. So him talking about that duality and Vicky not being able to get on board with it, and then her being this other option, it's like you can see that I think like that Tim Burton was going somewhere with that he was
Mm-hmm.
sort of stating that, like, save for this one aspect, Batman is no different than the villains that he fights, right? And
Right.
I think like nowadays that's a very sort of like cliche whatever way to talk about Batman, but I think in 1992 it was a pretty fresh take
Yeah.
to put him. I mean, like 1989 also does that, where it's like Joker is kind of like, you and me are so different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it is definitely, it's there in that earlier stuff, but I think that this one just plays with it in exactly the right way, and
Mm-hmm.
and is so expert. So yeah, see, we had a little bit, we still had a little bit more to talk, but I knew there was something else. Cool. I think we did it though. I think we did it. I think we've made a case
Yay.
for it. I think that firmly establishes Batman Returns in the lexicon of perfect
Sweet.
tense. But awesome. Is there anything you wanna plug? Anywhere you wanna push people?
Not particularly. If anybody wants to chat with me on Twitter, I am or whatever it's being called these days.
Yeah, we just call it Twitter. It's fine.
Yeah, we just call it Twitter. That's our little bit of rebellion.
Yeah.
I'm at 87 Zoo Lemons, and I'm on there an unhealthy amount. And then
Yeah.
if you're into fan fiction, I am on Archive of Our Own under the author name Danny Marie. Most of which is Raylo Star Wars content, some Elder Scrolls Online content, and I'm currently still in the process of doing a novelized version of the playthrough for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Go check that stuff out. Thank you for being on the episode, of course.
Yeah.
And,
Thanks for asking.
I'm excited. I don't. What are we going to talk about next Christmas?
I don't know.
Start thinking about it now. Awesome. Well, that's it. We did it. Another nerdy conversation in the books. Thanks for listening to ThunderQuack Perfect 10. If you found joy in today's discussion, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast service and leave a rating and review. If you want to chat about today's episode, you can head over to our Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord, and your comments might be used in a future episode. I've sort of like these plans that I'm going to do that I want to do sort of like some more feedback centric episodes. And in the new year, I had the idea, and then there was the strike and everything, so it was like, well, now's not really the right time to launch this and all that. But I think in the new year will be a good time, and I'll start doing that. I'd like to do it. I'd like to get to a place where we can do it for every episode, but we're just not. We don't have enough feedback that'll carry through an entire episode at this point. But if we can get there, that would be awesome. But in any case, like I've got a few comments about the last few episodes that I think that we can in January probably pull together like a full feedback episode with your guys' thoughts. So jump over on our Discord. Our Discord is also just a great place to hang out and have conversations with people. That is like free from the rest of the internet and the toxicity and everything. Speaking of Twitter. So thunderquack.com/Discord. And so come hang out with us there. But that's it. That's it for this one. Until next time, remember, it's not about the score. It's about the love. Stay geeky, everyone. ThunderQuack Perfect 10 is hosted by me, Michael Keaton. Follow us on Twitter at ThunderQuackPod, on Instagram at ThunderQuackPodcast, on Facebook at ThunderQuack, and join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the podcast by heading to patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get early access, bonus episodes, and the ThunderQuack Perfect 10 Pop Quiz. ThunderQuack Perfect 10 is part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network. Thanks for listening.